with you today. And you're right, these are my favorite topics. I've been focusing on them for over 25 years. So to me, it's a very comfortable area to focus on. And I'm excited that more and more people are interested in these topics, not just for selfish gain, as some people might suspect, but more for the well-being of all concerned. And I know that's so close, near and dear to your heart as well.
Absolutely, very much so. And where I'd like to start is this concept, because you contacted me with this very unique concept that really instantly spoke to my heart, which is called Rev Humanism, which you've developed. And can you share with us what Rev Humanism is all about? Because I think it's a beautiful concept and absolutely dead right for our times.
Yes, the topic, the idea, it's got Latin roots. Rev has a Latin root meaning to revive, regain, or recall. I also like the way, for myself, it brings to mind reverence, which is a very high level vibratory frequency of emotion. So it's a little bit, you go to gratitude. And for me, if I reach that state of reverence, then I'm feeling the spirit, the light within all. So to look at another being as recognizing it's part of oneself, really to feel that very connected, interconnected, entangled sense in a very deep, profound way. For me, it makes my heart break open with love. I'll start to see things unfolding real time in my surrounding environment that have to do with what's happening on the inside, and I'll witness it on the outside. So it's an invitation for humanity, if and when we're ready to accept it, to step into much more of a fullness of self at a level of a very profound level of realizing that we're much more than just our physical bodies, and that the true fabric of our being, if you will, has a very spiritual nature. And to embrace that is to really walk into the unfolding of ourselves as we become the next evolution of ourselves. I'm trying to say this succinctly. It's much deeper than that sounds. So I'm trying to use simple words to convey a very complex topic. But basically, we're creating ourselves. We're creating reality. And again, not from a very selfish, sort of overly myopic standpoint, but with the awareness that we really are a part of all that is. So it's a recognition of respect, connection, and real kindness and empathy. That's the way these kinds of implications go when we start connecting with one another, with levels of ourself, with all of our relations, and with nature. So in a nutshell, that's the main idea behind it. And the reason it comes to mind now is because people are wondering, where are we going? There's a lot of fearfulness, as you're aware, and so people can easily get distracted by things that look like they're real. They look like we're looking at material things in the news and things we hear. It all sounds quite convincing, like, oh dear, this is a disaster. And what I've learned from more than 25 years of scientific and spiritual research in this field is that mind and matter are intimately connected. We have a lot to do with the way everything unfolds, much more than we realize. So even if things seem like they're very bad or slightly bad or very good, it doesn't matter. We're able to affect and involve ourselves in that, and to recognize that we are Rev Human. That's our nature. It's just intrinsically built into us. This is who we really are. Homo sapiens is wise human. Rev Human is just this awareness that we are coming from this place of regeneration and co-creation, and that we're capable of doing this in a very reverent, connected, related way. And I don't hear about this much spoken. I think collectively, humanity, you're right, we're ready for it. We're going to be looking for it because we're about to see a huge breakthrough in the way physics is understood, not just for the technologies that are rolling out, but just in all levels of our being. So there we go.
It's beautiful because it's a reverence for all sentient beings. It's a remembrance, it feels like, of ancient wisdom, and it feels kind of, there's such a strong sense of co-creation and fluidity with the whole cosmos in that concept, and it feels very deeply embedded in indigenous wisdom and shamanism even. So could you say more about that, Cynthia?
Absolutely. Yes, it is deeply. Thank you for pointing that out. And in my new book about the Mandela effect, this is where I get into this topic, is toward the end. If people are wondering, where do I write about this? It's where I'm looking at where are we going as a species and how are we evolving. And when I look forward, some people might be surprised that toward the end of the book, I'm bringing up this indigenous wisdom. And my idea of going forward, some people might complain, you're going backward. You're looking at, well, like we know that we've moved on from indigenous First Nation wisdom. I really don't think we have moved on. I look at that as the eternal wisdom. I think the indigenous ways of recognizing all of our relations, and then maybe I should jump into a little bit about this connection with David Bohm here. Okay.
Yeah, I'd love you to, because weren't you involved in discussion groups quite long term?
Yes.
With Leroy Littlebear, the Indigenous,
Yes.
and David Bohm. And for those viewers who don't know, David Bohm was lecturer in theoretical physics at London University, one of my big-time heroes, and he was the man that had all-night-long conversations with the mystic Krishnamurti about the nature of reality. And I actually wrote about him at some length in my first book, because his theory of how reality works, with his theory of the implicate and the explicate order, is really how I think astrology works in the world. And so I would love you to talk about all of that, those discussion groups, David Bohm, Leroy Littlebear. I'd love you to share that, Cynthia.
Yeah, I've got some notes here because there's some interesting things about these conversations that came about. I wrote some notes about when was this? 1992. There was a gathering, a very small gathering that was brought together with Leroy Littlebear, David Bohm, and linguists, including Dan Moonhawk Alfred, who I knew. He's no longer with us, but he's another deeply connected in my heart. So that linguist, together with Leroy Littlebear, the Blackfoot, indigenous, Harvard-educated gentleman, and David Bohm, they got together to find out how is this universe working. If we had a conversation with physicists and indigenous First Nation wisdom keepers and people who really understand what the nature of reality is from a very deep, profound level, from observation and awareness, what would they find? And the linguist was there, of course, to bridge the languages, because as some of the indigenous people, including Leroy Littlebear and Dan Moonhawk Alfred, would say, languages are very different, and the way that the language operates can change the way you think. We see this with quantum physics. As we start using the language of quantum physics, we notice we're thinking differently. We're talking about things differently. But the points of agreement were fascinating because they came up with 8 points of agreement. I'm going to focus on the top 3 so we don't get too into the weeds. The first 3 that they noticed had in common between quantum physics, or all of physics rather, and indigenous thinking was that consciousness is primary. Consciousness is very fundamental. It's quite it's at the root of everything. And then, of course, you see that when David Bohm is speaking about his ideas, and he was so well respected by Albert Einstein. He was considered by Einstein to be his successor. That didn't work out. Instead, David Bohm kind of got driven out of the United States. I think these ideas are so powerful that some of our control structures are terrified. Yeah. It chokes me up. Yeah. They get scared of it. These are big ideas. So David Bohm was saying that there is an implicate order. This would be like the consciousness that creates everything at the root foundation. And so that implicate, foundational, primary awareness, that is the implicate order in all of reality. It would be what David Bohm would say. And then the Native Americans or indigenous people around the world would agree it is consciousness. The second thing was that everything is vibration. And of course, we hear this with Albert Einstein. And David Bohm talks about this too. And he's aware, he later embraced an idea, I guess, originated by de Broglie, another physicist, of pilot waves, so that you can see where this holographic kind of a movement might proceed through our linear concept of time by virtue of a pilot wave. And that's very cutting edge physics as well. The third idea is that we're all interconnected, is what the indigenous would say. In physics, they call that entanglement. And of course, that's part of David Bohm's worldview, between this implicate order where things are still manifesting and then explicate as they become manifest. And we see this in languages like the Hopi language. The words tunatia means that something is, it's in the process of manifesting, and then tunatiava means it is here. So and this is the way that the Hopi would think about it. I wrote an article for a magazine called Parabola, the magazine of myth, tradition, and folklore, called Comes True, Being Hoped For. And it's all about this idea, the physics of it and the indigenous wisdom of it. So I've been tracking this as well. And then, yes, I did get involved with some of these gatherings. David Bohm had passed on, but some of the other scientists were still joining. Leroy Little Bear was there, and the members of the Seed University in Albuquerque, New Mexico, including Glenn Aparicio Perry, Leon Secatero, but it was led by Leroy Little Bear, who had been right there from the very beginning. And these gatherings they've profoundly influenced the way I see reality. The process of it's called a Bohmian dialogue, and we were doing a version of that, a small version for 3 days, just people sitting in the inner circle would be given a chance to speak about whatever comes to mind. Leroy Little Bear would position us in a medicine wheel circle. So he'd be at the north. I was noticing the direction of the voices of the north, the people speaking from the south, the way that Leroy placed us. That's still ringing inside my heart and soul. And this is 25 years later. So if you're wondering how big a difference can Bohmian dialogue make, where one person speaks and they just keep talking, and then you're thinking, what's going on? And I went and got coffee at one point, came back, and like the same speaker was still speaking. It was amazing. But then I started relaxing into the process, which is what indigenous wisdom keepers do. They go into nature and you just sit still. And you want to do things. Your monkey mind is busy, but you just sit still longer. Now you really want to get up and do things. But if you just stay with it a little longer, nature will speak to you. And you can receive messages of such profound meaning and significance in your life. And amazing things can happen. And as you expand into this reverence in the state of Rev humanism we were talking about, amazing, miraculous things unfold. Just like David Bohm would say, that this is the nature of it. And I know that when he had those long conversations with Krishnamurti, he was experiencing this. So it's not just talking about the ideas. David Bohm was all about experiencing them. And when I look forward to the humanity's future, this is what I see: deep listening, unfolding into a deeper level of ourselves, not rushing around with that monkey mind so that chatter, 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 and busy, busy, busy is all that's occupying ourselves, but instead getting into this idea, which really is a Bohmian idea, of this very implicate, deep, relaxed order. So the more you relax, the quieter and stiller you become, the finer this mesh becomes. It's like you're moving through these levels of conscious agency that are quite real. I've seen it firsthand, that this idea, when I've heard someone presenting it in a university setting, I'm not going to name names, but there are people there that I think were hired to be detractors of that topic. But to me, this is where everything, the future of reality, physics, consciousness, and ourselves is really going.
Absolutely. And it just feels as if we're reconnecting. It's kind of involution, isn't it? It's a reconnection to the magic cycles of nature, the cycles of the planets, the cycles of the seasons, this sense of oneness, that we are part of it all. It's Lemurian as well, but it's deeply shamanic, I feel. And it's that we've lost in our modern society. So I'm absolutely delighted that you've developed this concept of Rev humanism. And also the Hopi talked about this time, didn't they? They saw two paths forward for humanity, essentially. And I know you've written articles and talked about this too. Can you touch on that as well, Cynthia?
Yes. So the Hopi, they did have a prophecy rock, meaning that the petroglyphs carved on the stone, it's a very large stone with lots of carvings. And if you look at it, you'll see that there are two, what we would call timelines depicted on the rock. The upper timeline is going up, it's starting at the lower left of the rock and then going up. I'm trying to figure out where the camera is. Oh, there we go. So it kind of goes up, using my fingers to represent. And then the lower path, it continues. It just keeps going. It doesn't end. And down at the lower left is the creator, and he's giving advice to the humans. The advice that the Hopi understand, they know that we've been through the ending of the world many times. They know this is the fourth world. And so don't panic. This happens. It's like very cyclical, as we see from astrology. And so the Hopi understood that. And so this stone, this rock was meant to be I think of it as hopeful. It's not just portending great disaster. I don't see it that way. It was recommending that we've done this before. Here's the advice from the times that we've done this before. So as we know, the Creator reminds us, as the Hopi are told, to keep the crown chakra, they call it the Kopavi, open, so that you receive your inspiration through your dreams, through your intuition, through your direct knowingness, much more than just your human-centered knowingness. But remember, we're expanding and listening deeply to nature. So you really open up so you can learn from the stars like you do, learn from the earth, all of our relations, and then keep the heart open. It's very simple. Keep your Kopavi and your heart open. And it's important to be open-hearted because then you don't become cold and distant and uncaring. Our relations matter with our levels of ourself and all of our relations on the earth. So that was the advice from the Creator. Be respectful of yourselves and others and the earth. So the people that do that, they continue happily on their path. And some various issues come up that were, at the time the stone was carved, they were in the future. A great shaking with a gourd of ashes falling the first time. And then a great shaking and a gourd of ashes falling a second time. At the time of the carving, nobody quite knew what that was. Now we look at it like, oh my goodness, that looks like World War I. That looks like World War II. And then there was the last time that the Hopi went to the United Nations, recommending again, please be mindful of the earth. And they had a big message to deliver. And that's showing on the rock too. There was like one last chance for humanity to really pull it together. To me, it means adopt this Rev humanism approach. You can do it right where you are. You don't have to do anything fancy. But so to be connected like that, keep your heart open, keep your crown chakra open, we'll be fine. And then you can see on the rock that even the people they're walking with the support of canes, elderly, invalid people are still making it just fine from the fourth world to the fifth is what this rock is all about. So no problem. However, the people that were forgetting to stay connected, basically. They're kind of going up, and it looks like they're disappearing into the cloud, like they've uploaded themselves into the cloud, and bye-bye. Happy trails, and I hope that goes well for you. That's how I interpret it. I'll keep it simple. I'll keep it at that. But if you look closer, you'll see their little heads have sort of popped off. If you look really close, there's a video on YouTube where Greg Braden shows this, and then you can see it for yourself and think, oh my goodness, that can't be good. So you don't want to lose your head. These look like little robot heads popping off. That's not my happy trail, so I don't recommend that path.
So
I recommend the other.
Humanism is just full of heart, full of soul, full of divinity, full of interconnectedness, full of love, really, for all beings. And it seems like the perfect antidote to any synthetic technology that may be tempting us at the moment. So, I just think it is such a beautiful way to go, and it's landing right on time. So that's why I'm so thrilled to be having this conversation with you, because it's all about remembering the magic, isn't it? It's about remembering the magic, not only of who we are, but also our magical quantum powers. And that's what I'd love to sort of shift onto now, because I know you wrote a physics paper, Cynthia, on is there an objective reality, or are all realities subjective? Because all of your work would suggest the latter, and I'd love for you to talk to us about that.
Yes, I co-authored a paper with George Weissman. He's one of the hippies who saved physics, and there is a book by that title. I love it. These are my friends. If you wonder who are Cynthia's friends, they are the hippies who saved physics. I know Fred Alan Wolf and Elizabeth Rauscher, who started the fundamental physics group at UC Berkeley. I knew her when she was alive. Wonderful lady. And George Weissman, of course. So I just want to do a little shout out there. Now, Henry Stapp will tell you I was not one of them. Oh, nonsense. He was there. So some people are just humble and but I know he's a wonderful gentleman too. So these are the people that I look up to who recognize that you don't just shut up and calculate, that it does matter what's going on inside of the quantum physics paradigm. Like, what is that? And so in part of our conversations to pursue this mysterious quantum paradigm, is it the David Bohm holographic interpretation? Is it the handshake from the future and the past, the transactional interpretation? All these different ways of looking at the world. There's the collapse of the wave function, the Copenhagen interpretation, the many worlds interpretation of Hugh Everett III. So I'm just putting them all out there. And then people ask me, what's your favorite? I like several of them. And I think quantum physics is doing what nature does. It's like maybe there's not just one. So I'll just put that there. So when George Weissman and I were looking at this, and we both love the Tibetan kind of a Buddhist philosophy, we were both strangely or synchronistically students of this idea of time, space, and knowledge, and the books that were written in that vein. So when we were looking at the quantum paradigm together, we thought, let's write a paper so that we can support the idea and put this forward that subjective observation is really the fundamental way that we are co-creating and relating with all of reality. That looks like the way that things are, that objectivity is an assumption. In other words, we assume, for example, that it's one time across all of time and space. It's like what we know what now is, now, right now for me in California, we'd say it's the same now for you in the United Kingdom, in England. But is it really? If you're a physicist and you start noticing time is moving differently, faster at some altitudes and elevations than slower at others, and it's different in outer space, well, right away you can start to see like, oh, wow, objectivity, it's very different. It's not one, even you can't even agree on one moment of now. So if you can't even quite say that one moment of now is the same for everyone, and that's just the beginning, it actually gets a lot weirder. Then maybe it's much more much more true to say that subjective reality is really what we're observing, especially when we're in these physical bodies. We're kind of relegated to that, and I think you can see that when you study astrology as well. I think it starts showing through. And again, I think there are indicators of the David Bohmian implicate and explicate order in all of this, that you can recognize that at different filter levels, we're observing things differently. So a human's observing things differently than a tree would be observing things, for example. So again, the objectivity that humans, we're not very humble sometimes. And so if we're thinking that the whole world must revolve around what we are sensing with our eyes and our measurement devices, well, that just looks ridiculous. So George and I went through that a little bit, from a physics point of view. And we've been thrilled to see that Carlo Rovelli, the physicist, also is writing papers about this too. So we're in good company there. And I'm just excited in general that physics is going in such a good direction. I was very blessed when I studied physics at UC Berkeley. I had two favorite professors, George Trilling and then John Clark. You might have heard John Clark's name this last week or so. He just won the Nobel Prize for Physics, working with Josephson junction tunneling and noticing that you can observe these so-called quantum phenomena at the very macroscopic scale. He was my professor, and the work he did that just won him the Nobel Prize is what he was working on when I was his student. This is decades ago. So sometimes the Nobel Prize I'm just so glad it awarded it while he's still alive. He's from England originally, so he always had that beautiful British accent, which we all adored. But most of all, what a humble gentleman. So I'm just doing a shout out. Hi, John Clark. Congratulations. So thrilled. And basically, yeah, I think you can see when we notice the slow progression of physics, like how long did it take for people to recognize, that you don't just shut up and calculate, that there are some things going on that are much deeper. We're coming to that point. We're seeing it gradually rolling out with the Nobel Prizes, but it takes time. People that are following your work are not quite so slow, thank goodness, because we need to.
Yeah, they're a good lot, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating because if you're just watching the nightly news, you think there is one objective reality, and it's overwhelming, and it's pretty doom and gloom. And that's the feeling that most people have. There is one objective reality, and there doesn't seem to be much we can do about it. Whereas all of your work turns that on its head and said, no, reality is way more malleable than we can possibly imagine. And that's what I love about your work, because you've had multidimensional experience since childhood. Yes, Cynthia? I mean, you've been many, many of these. And I'd love you to talk a little bit about that. And then that gets us into quantum jumping as well.
Yes. So when I talk about these different, you can see one thing, but don't get stuck feeling like that's what's happening. Remember the implicate explicate order. I think that's the big takeaway today. Remember David Bohm, please. Remember that just there's the consciousness, which is kind of like the hand inside the puppet, the implicate order. The explicate order is the puppet that you see. And so you're watching TV, you're watching the news, and you're seeing the puppet, but consciousness is moving the puppet. And so if you know that like it's just a puppet show, you're going to have a very different view of the news. I think a much more refreshing view. It can be much more enjoyable. Like, oh, haha, look how they're presenting it today. It's a puppet show. I think that's much more accurate. and you might think like, oh, but Cynthia, life is very hard. I know that. I've been through some very difficult times. I think to walk my path is to be challenged, certainly, because what I believe or what I think is true, I get it thrown right in my face personally. And so many of my own experiences, I do write about them. I've got a whole chapter of them in my new book about the Mandela effect. I think it's important to put my cards on the table and say, these are things that I've observed, which really, they're like the X-Files or something. It's kind of, or the Twilight Zone. It's where did this stuff come from? What's happening here? And exactly. I've just had numerous examples in my personal life of things that seem completely impossible, completely miraculous to occur. And so I think when I get the challenges, it's just another opportunity. Like, well, are you still that radical optimist, Cynthia? And in the midst of long haul COVID, I just said yes. And I realized, wow, I don't have to be. I might never get cured of this. Yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. How good can it get?
Yeah, I love that rolling mantra you have in your life. How good can it get? Because that automatically shifts your frequency, doesn't it? And when we shift our
Absolutely.
frequency, we shift our potential reality.
And
So
it might, yeah, exactly. And it might be, some of the times I'd said it, it's kind of like, how good can it get? And it's like, it sounds ironic or sort, just like, this is such a joke. Things are so bad. There's no way it can possibly get better. Saying, how good can it get? It's like, it's like, this is ridiculous. Yeah, I'll do it anyway. And it does kind of make me smile a little bit. Sometimes things can be pretty dark, and I'm like, I don't see how this can be good, but I remember to keep that question. This is a physics question. Again, it's a fun physics question. Working with the research behind John Archibald Wheeler's wonderful idea that anytime we ask nature a question, nature will always answer. And we see this in the double slit experiment. We see it in so many things. I don't need to dive into all of that, but you take my word for it, and I do cover it in my books. But in my personal life, I absolutely witness this. And I think that's important for people to know, that I'm not just saying something and then I've been walking this path for over 25 years. So I've definitely been challenged, tested, all my buttons pushed, all of that. And you might think like, no, like, oh yes. And it's okay. Because I'm looking for just that feeling of energy that comes through. We'll talk about how to do it in a minute, but the main thing that I'm noticing is just like, look at my experience. How can I deny that miracles are happening when I've seen too many things? I've seen things seem to be a certain way and then change. Like I've needed money to tip a waitress and I didn't have the right amount of cash in my wallet. Not a disaster. I could have done a credit card tip, but my young daughters were with me and they were just wondering like, how are we going to tip the waitress if you don't have enough cash? But they're young and open-minded and open-hearted. And so I said, well, sometimes they were growing up in my household and they'd seen things. So I said, sometimes you just shut the wallet and you open it again. Maybe there's another dollar bill. And I was able to pull dollar bill after dollar bill out of an empty wallet. I think we ended up getting several of them, just the right amount for the tip. That was phenomenal. I didn't expect that. I've had a flat tire be repaired while I was driving the car. I did pull the car over to the side of the road. I was running late for an appointment, but it went from a flat tire that was going thwop, 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 thwop. It was pulling on the steering wheel. It was slowing me down. I could hear it, feel it, everything. I'm saying that because when I got out of the car to go inspect I knew which wheel it was, front right tire. It looked fine. And then I was really confused because there's no point setting up the jack stand and making myself all dirty and late. I don't need to change a tire when it doesn't need changing. But I was so confused because I'd heard it and felt it. And I'd been asking, how good can it get when this happened? That to make matters worse. I was like, oh, brother, there I am asking, how good can it get? And I get a flat tire. Ha! Well, what happened next was it wasn't really a flat tire, apparently. So I kept getting out of the car and looking at the tire, getting back in the car. It was so confusing. And finally I thought, well, I'll just go slowly and I'll listen. It sounded fine. It's not pulling on the steering wheel. Went to my appointment, got out, looked at the tire. It was fine. Went to the appointment, came back to the garage, looked at the tire. It was fine. Went home, asked my husband, could you please check the tire? So he checked it and he said, well, a good thing you said that because 3 of the tires really needed inflating. One didn't. And I'm like, wait a minute, which one didn't?
Front right, yeah, front right.
Front right, yeah. So it's between that and so many other things. I have a whole chapter full of these, as well as myself being reported dead to many people, right at a time when a betrayal and all my buttons getting pushed just about did me in, and I felt like, well, that's it. Until I did actually realize, wait a minute, my life is not just my own. I'll stand up and face all this because it's not just about me. So I made that decision on the inside. This is very emotional for me, just to realize, like, okay, because I don't have a fear of dying. I should say that. So if people are thinking you were going to die, hey, no big deal. For me, I felt like I've lived a good life. It's going to be fine. But actually, I realize as I get older, I realize more and more that my life is not just my own. And it really is a service to the world and to others. Not because I'm that great, but because I make a difference in a positive way. So that may sound obvious to some people, but when it's your own life and you're facing the very severe sort of betrayal and just everything falling apart all at once, or so it seemed, then to stand up and say, okay, I'll face this entire mess and I'll take it all on, the unfairness of it, the betrayal, everything. It'll be, I didn't know how it would be fine, but that was where I came to eventually, like, it's going to be fine. And as soon as I started realizing that, the entire situation also miraculously shifted, and that's mind blowing how that happened. But this is the path I walk, and it is what I recommend people do if it works for you and appeals to you, because it ties in with that Rev humanism again. We're meant to be these co-creators. We're not victims. It may look like we're victims, but we can start creating through our observation. You are a subjective observer. You can look at something and you can ask, how good can it get? And in that process of asking that question, you are absolutely changing things. I know it may not look changed right away. And you may say, Cynthia, I've done this for months and nothing changed. That took me months too, for that very stuck, crazy, all the buttons pushed situation. But it totally shifted. It was mind blowing. So in a good way. And it can work for all of us.
Yeah, it really is sort of living in the magic zone, isn't it?
Yes.
And I'm recalling a particular. I've had many miracles in my life and witnessed many, many more miracles with other people using these kind of principles. But I remember many years ago, my mother had passed away, and I'd gone and had a Reiki session, and the Reiki healer said, this room was just full of love and full of roses. And I said, well, that's interesting because my mother loved roses. That's really interesting. Anyway, I went home and I was packing up to spend a week up in Scotland. And I sort of said to my higher self and an angel, well, I didn't see any roses in the healing session, show me. So I went to my only wardrobe in the house to start to pack up clothes for the week. And I've moved, lived in lots of different places in the world. And right at the front of the wardrobe was this tiny hand knitted baby sweater with my name hand embroidered on the label, Pamela, and a satin rose sewn on the collar. It was a tiny little lambswool sweater for a baby, and I have never seen that in my life before. I've never seen that. I've still got it, but it just sort of manifested. And so, I understand this principle of living in the magic zone and how good can it get, because that instantly shifts your reality. And so this idea of there is no one objective reality, there are an infinite number of subjective realities, is total sovereignty, isn't it? It's total empowerment, isn't it, in the way we live our lives?
Yes. And so then some people may wonder, well, why are we suffering then? Like, if all this is available, why do we have to go through these difficult times? And I don't know the answer to that. But I do know that I can learn things as I go through it. So sometimes, like these times I've been challenged, are times of great revelation. And I noticed that as I mature through my life, that the things I'm learning, like my life is much more than just my own. I really am learning that in this lifetime. I don't think I knew it before quite so well. So I can now keep that with me through all iterations of myself. If you believe in, an afterlife or future lives. So that'll be very good. And I'm wearing rose fragrance. I don't usually wear fragrance, but I'm wearing rose essential oil today. I just felt like I need to wear rose. I need to bring rose with me. I just had to say that. Like,
I've just been burning some rose incense actually, so that's incredible synchronicity there. So yeah,
that's sweet.
natural incense. So that's beautiful. So this is interesting because it's the way astrology works. I mean, David Bohm's concept of the implicate order was about pure consciousness, essentially, wasn't it? That then collapses into manifestation in the what he called the explicate order. And in a way, that's how astrology works because it's pure potentiality expressed as your birth chart, your individual sheet of music, but it's still pure potentiality until you start to live it. You co-create it with your own frequency, and then the tapestry of your life starts to weave. But you have a multitude of choices still within that sheet of music. You can bang an old tin box, or you can play it with a philharmonic orchestra. You still have great latitude in how that can express. So that's why I got so excited about David Bohm's ideas, because that's exactly how I feel. We are not in this rut of you have no free will, you have no choice, you have to just walk this rut through life. It's not that at all. It opens up your choice rather than limits your choice, because you start to understand the latitude of possibilities that you have before us. And your mantra, Cynthia, of how good can it get is the key, I think, to unlock all of those possibilities, or many more of them, that suddenly pop into your manifestation, into your world, and blow up the flat tire, or make you well again, or all of the experiences you've been through. And so that to me represents the core of total sovereignty and empowerment in terms of where we're moving to. And so it can flip everything on its head of where we are currently in life, thinking, oh, we're all done, doom and gloom and no point in doing anything. We can switch that, we can flip-flop it back into no, absolutely not. Within each small one of us, we have magnificence and we have so much potential. And that's what I absolutely, adore about your work, and the whole idea of multiple parallel timelines as well. So maybe we can get into quantum jumping, because I just adored your book, Quantum Jumps. And that's why I read it about 3 times, quite some years ago. And so talk to us about quantum jumps, the whole principle of quantum jumps and how we do it, and also we might get into the physics, the actual physics of how that works as well, which would be fascinating.
Yes, well, the concept is rather simple. It just, like you suggested, you start with wherever you are, recognize that things could be better, and maybe you might even sense like there's an alternate possible reality adjacent to you. Maybe something as simple as losing weight, but maybe that's not simple for you, or healing, or just getting a good job, or understanding something that's never made sense before, or having a better relationship, all sorts of things. So the idea of the vast realm of what's possible with quantum jumping is pretty much everything is possible. And it really does start with recognizing that, okay, yeah, I'll get to the physics in a minute then. I was going to go to the physics first, but we don't want everyone dozing off. We'll just start with, basically, I'll just say, I'll do a teaser. There's something required to make a quantum jump, and that is energy. And we'll go into that, the physics of it. But the energy that you feel personally comes from your breath, from movement, from imagination. So I'm talking about the components of Qigong, which means energy work. You can do that with yoga, with Tai Chi, people do it with martial arts, shamanism, all sorts of different healing modalities work with this as well. So the energy, and it could just be taking a big, deep breath of air and feeling like in with the good, like in with how good can it get, and out with anything else. Yeah, I mean, it could be simple like that. And you can do hand movements. So when you feel that energy is changing, and you know that there's something possible, maybe you don't know what it is, then ask how good can it get. Sometimes people think they know what it is, but they feel like maybe there's something sabotaging them, like they keep asking for, I just need this money and it's never coming in. So you can get in sort of a loop there. So basically what you want to do is stay focused on the objective. And if you can't quite lock it in, then just keep asking how good can it get. It'll keep lifting you out of the mud hole or whatever you might be stuck in. And then you want to move and act as if you're free there. So, for example, if someone had been given a very bad diagnosis from a doctor, this happens, and you don't want to hear that. And it's like, oh gosh, I don't like this news. And then now you have to go back for an appointment to see how it's going with whatever. That can be kind of discouraging. I think the whole medical process can be very discouraging, just the way it's currently being run. But I worked with one gentleman, and he said, he went to a workshop on quantum jumping that I held on the East Coast in Long Island, and I was talking during the workshop, like you can literally jump, and I have a picture in the book, Quantum Jumps. You can jump into a new reality. You get the energy of it. You can feel like it's happening. He said, Cynthia, is it okay to do that in the elevator when I go to the doctor's appointment? And I said, that would be perfect. So he started doing that because he said, that's when I'm most stressed. It's like they're going to give me these results. It could be bad news. I don't want to hear bad news. So he's like jumping. And it boosts the energy. He felt like he knew he was jumping into that new reality. It's going to be good news. And he said it totally worked. So he went from a diagnosis where the cancer is not really letting up, and then suddenly the cancer is gone and staying gone. And what a good way to do that. So the jumping can be quite literally jumping, because you want your entire body involved and engaged. It's not just the neurons in your brain. You have neurons in your heart, just like the Hopi you're talking about. Keep that open, keep both open. You also have neurons in your gut. So we're seeing evidence of what David Bohm was talking about with the implicate order perhaps having filters. I think he's exactly right about that. I'm talking about him in the present tense because to me, David Bohm's ideas are very much alive. And when I look at this, it's like, that's what we're doing. We're jumping with the fullness and the totality of ourselves, with the awareness that within this infinite, vast expanse of possibility, of course there are possible versions of ourselves that are already in this wonderful reality where we know we are meant to be. So we can work with this energy, with this joy. And I think sometimes people are challenged, like, how do you stay positive? Well, that's a whole big subject, but these are the components, just keeping that possibility open. And even if you're not happy, I've got an exercise in quantum jumps. I'm holding a pen. Make sure it's something clean. You put it in your mouth and curl the edges of your mouth up. I've got silly exercises like that in the book because they've been proven to cheer you up and to lift your spirits, scientifically proven. So just acting as if you're happy has scientifically been proven that people actually do respond like they're happier. They're actually feeling happier, even though they were perhaps not happy at all to start with. So everything's possible. Don't give up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a personal experience of this myself because in June, I had a regular dental appointment, and normally I'd bounce in and bounce out of those. And the dentist said, I'm going to send you by urgent referral to the oncology department of the local main hospital. And I said, don't be silly, it's ridiculous. Anyway, and I was spinning for a couple of days, with all these medical appointments sort of lining up. And something in me said, I've got to walk my talk. This is a personal test for me. And there's no way I'm doing that, because if I stay in this amount of fear, I'm going to manifest that timeline. I'm going to absolutely manifest that timeline. So I had to be extremely disciplined with myself that no, I'm going to live in joy. I'm in perfect radiant health, and I did lots of natural things as well. And I just saw the dentist earlier this week, and she said, well, the odd thing is it's all disappeared.
Oh, I love it.
But isn't that interesting? So we create our physicality, our physiology. And so I'm very passionate about this, which is why I love your work so much. And the way you describe quantum jumping in your book was obviously set a clear intention for yourself. And I always set it, as you do, Cynthia, for all and for Gaia. And the way you described it in Quantum Jumps was as if you're driving a manual car. Yes. And you disengage from a lower gear, and then you're in this kind of no time, no space, which is pure consciousness, before you engage a higher gear. And I thought that was such a brilliant analogy. So in that sort of in between the gears, you're in a state of 0 point, of pure consciousness, of being aware of a multitude of possibilities. And then you can set your vision, set your state of being, your frequency, and step into it or jump into it as if it were already here. And that's
Absolutely.
how I understood you describing it in quantum jumps. Is that a fair sort of assessment?
Yeah, it's a good. I think we like metaphors like that because most of us, if you've ever driven a car with a stick shift, then you can relate to that. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You want to release the gears because they kind of get stuck, and we get stuck in that explicate order. This so-called manifest reality, and we feel like we're jammed up in there. But if you can disengage, that would be through meditation. That works. Anything that relaxes you and kind of gets you laughing. Watch a funny movie. Do something. Be in nature. I love being in nature. But just that being with pets, plants and animals that you love, and that relaxes you. See, then you're disengaged from whatever you're stuck in, where you think you're stuck, because you're not stuck. And so that's moving out of that explicate order into the implicate order, or the keep switching gears. You disengage the gears. Then when you re-engage, you're back in a new explicate order, a new engagement of gears. And now it's the healthy one. It's the lucky one. It's the fortunate one. It's the good one. And if it doesn't seem perfect, don't give up. Because some people just get frustrated. Like it wasn't exactly what they were hoping it would be. Hang in there. Little baby steps. And we're not trying to be, I am the great poobah, masters of magic on the planet. At least I'm not.
Change gear again. Keep changing gear. Keep doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to ask how good I can get too. How good can I get? And so as I do that, I'm becoming hopefully more humble, more reverent, more kind. I would hope that this is uplifting me in all ways, and I see that it usually does. And so things that bothered me the day before, they're less likely to bother me as I'm moving on this spiritual path as well. So that's just a little tip that I'm offering. I think your viewers would probably really relate to that. They're probably doing it already. So yes.
And I think your state of being is absolutely primary because everything cascades from that. So, if you're feeling sluggish or tired, there's so many things you can do. You can hum, you can clap your hands, you can sing, you can dance, you can listen to beautiful music, you can candle gaze, you can do breath work, you can do yoga, you can do tai chi, you can sit and hug a tree, you can have bare feet on the grass. There's so many simple things you can do to shift that state of being from which you then create at a higher level. And for astrologers out there, this I think is increasingly I'm thinking this is the dwarf planet Kwawa, who was all about you don't create from chaos, you shift your state of being first and then you manifest from that higher state of being. It's no good because you'll just create more. If you try and manifest from the lower level, you're just going to create more chaos, and that's why I think if we're entangled in the gloom and doom, we just keep creating more and more of what we don't want and blame it for giving us a hard time, and we're in this vicious circle of madness because we're unconscious that we're doing it. And that's why I think your work can really help us break the cycle of that, to pattern interrupt, to break the cycle. Because it's really starting to explore our multidimensionality, isn't it? That we're not just, one being in one body in this reality as defined by the news, and that's it. And there's no other hope. Your work is the absolute antithesis of that.
That's right. And I like to look to see, like the cover of Quantum Jumps, if you open the whole book up, you can see it's jumping through a wormhole. And so if you open it to show the back too, sort of, I don't know if you can do that, show the front and back together. So open it so that the whole thing, there we go. Yes. Now there's a quantum jump here because it's showing that you're jumping through a wormhole of possibility through this Einstein-Podensky-Rosen bridge into another world. And that's truly recognizing that the many worlds of quantum physics is one and the same as the relativistic multiverse. And there's the physics right there on the cover of the book. Now, a funny thing happened with my explanation that used to be in that book that then vanished. A lot of funny things happened with my books. So I did include in this new book, there's an explanation of what I was meant to say, because it completely vanished. So many things have changed in my books. I find it entertaining. But to me, these are examples of, it's just playfulness of the universe. Like, haha, did you notice? It's no more explanation of what that was. I find it quite amusing. And that just gives me an opportunity to explain it like I did in the future book, that's what's going on there. And I think having a playful sense of fun when these things happen is good. Just like if you're dealing with, I think the universe is playing with us, like recognizing we are children and like it kind of nudging us and having fun. But if we're afraid to laugh, we're missing half the jokes and half the learning opportunities. So I do recommend people, have a lighthearted sense of things and see yourself from another vantage point, which is a big key to all of this quantum jumping. And here's a simple exercise you can do. I like to include lots of exercises in my books, and I want to share a big one. It's called Iliism,
Oh, yes, I wanted
ILL.
to ask you about this.
Yes, it's huge. Iliism, ILLEISM. And it's the idea that you can think and talk and write about yourself from another higher vantage point. Because if you're wondering, like, oh, Pam and Cynthia, you're all talking a good talk, but how do we come out of the mud? I'm stuck here. I don't even know how to get my thoughts out of it. Here's how to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Just start observing and write about yourself in third person. Like I, Cynthia, woke up this morning and I meditated. I asked how good can it get to start the day. And, so I'm talking about, Cynthia did this. Cynthia was thinking. Cynthia was feeling. So I'm writing about myself in third person, thinking about myself in third person. And what starts happening when we do that? We start to see, just like David Bohm's talking about, these nets of awareness. It's kind of like, to me, they're like Indra's net of consciousness. And they get finer, the level of fineness and coarseness and openness changes as you go through these levels, like the chakras, like the crown chakra, the heart chakra, the gut, and neurons. So as your consciousness is, at different levels, you'll be noticing something different. So when you're saying I, Cynthia, or instead of I, Cynthia, it's Cynthia, you're talking about her, then you're naturally above. You're taking the vantage point above it. So you can see Cynthia, and then something amazing happens. You notice Cynthia was a little bit grumpy because something happened. And then you'll realize, oh, she was grumpy. Then you'll see that's something that's going to come and go. You'll start to notice that whatever the conditions are that seem so oppressive, so inescapable, so overwhelming, these are just things that come and go. And you'll start to see that through observing it from that higher vantage point. That's the key to consciousness that the philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz talked about, that, different levels of observation observe this. So this idea of levels of observation and the David Bohm implicate-explicate order and this whole reality shifting, quantum jumping, it's all connected. There's a physics behind it, there's a philosophy behind it, and Iliism gives us a path to start recognizing, I know how to start doing this and seeing what's happening in my life. So keeping a journal, and then nudging it upward, remember to ask how good can it get. So Cynthia remembered to ask that, or Cynthia didn't remember to ask that today, and look what happened. Look what happened. Oh my God,
So
forget to ask.
That comes from the French, il, because il is third person. And so what you're doing in writing about third person, Pam had a wonderful walk in the forest this morning, you're developing the observer position.
Yes.
And in developing the observer position, you develop more of a kind of divine neutrality in your life, and you can remove some of the emotional intensity from any challenging situation, because this is something they teach in yoga a lot too, and I'm sure in other disciplines, but it's developing the observer.
Yes.
And makes you aware that there are other possibilities and removes the angst from the situation, gives you a big picture.
The observer is the creator. We learn this from quantum physics. To observe is to create. And we're starting to see experiments where different observers can be at the same place and same time with two completely different observations. And once again, we've got proof of that subjective reality we were talking about. If we know that's happening, then let's just keep asking, how good can it get? Let's just keep playing with this reality that it's a God-given ability that we are able to have this Iliism capability, like you said, to have that third person view, to just, no matter what things seem to be, just take a step back, a step above, and observe it from there. And as you do that, you're above it, and you're now, that's one of the huge ideas in my new book about the Mandela effect. Whichever the upper hand, it's like the game where you put one hand on top of the other, and whoever's hand is on top wins. Well, whoever is observing at that top level, you're the one calling the shots of what the reality is about to unfold. And I think this is why this whole David Bohm implicate explicate order and these levels of conscious agency, this idea has been so secret, so covered up. I think it's been one of the top things that's been kept so secret for so many years. But you're bringing it out today and you're talking about it. I'm talking about it. We need it right now. And as you describe in the astrology, the time is coming for the people to recognize we can all do this. And when we're wishing for the best for all concerned, it doesn't matter who the PowerPoints used to be. Everything is about to change.
Yeah.
And again,
when we come
Rev
together
humanism,
in
yeah.
numbers, because then the energy is magnified, isn't it? When we come together
Yes.
in numbers, and that's what's so thrilling. So, is this linked in physics, Cynthia, to the law of downward causation, that higher frequency has greater influence on lower than the other way around? Is that part of that observer effect?
Well, it does seem like the filters again. I see it with David Bohm's concept when he's looking at the implicate order and it looks filtered. It's sort of like, I think he would say that you get to a certain refinement of the observer, like the higher, what I would call a higher level of conscious agency is not going to get polluted with these, or I'm just using, he wouldn't say polluted. I'm not sure what he'd say, but you know what I mean. It wouldn't get
or
muddy.
contaminated or.
Right. And we see this with the Hawkins scale of, consciousness when you're looking at those. If people don't know what we're talking about, you can refer to that and see that when you're going through the anger and the fear, these are lower vibratory frequencies. And when you go up to the scale of gratitude and then reverence, that's way high. And if you can hold those frequencies, then you can be more entertained and amused by the unfolding of events without getting all torn up and feeling victimized or anxious or angry about it. So it gives us the ability to evolve our emotional response kit and lift out of this dynamic of, the unmerry merry-go-round, where it's called the victim triangle or the Karpman drama triangle. So instead of being a victim and being so sad, you can rise above and be the observer, be the creator, and start creating. And you see great creators do this. They had a difficult time, but they create from that. And they're no longer stuck in that sadness and grief. And with the rescuer role of someone who's fearful and anxious, you can evolve that into being a coach, to showing like, okay, it can seem scary, but here we go. Let's keep asking how good can it get? And then you can be, instead of the persecutor who's so angry and righteous and knows what's right and wrong, you can just be a challenger, just asking questions like, is this the best it can get? Is it? And you're not, people may say troublemaker, but it's a good trouble. Is this really the best it can get?
Yeah, good trouble, as you said. And what Cynthia was referring to, if people aren't familiar, David Hawkins was a brilliant, I think he was a psychotherapist, Cynthia? And
yeah.
And he developed this very well-known now map of consciousness. And at the peak, I think you've got emotions of peace and love, etc., very high frequency. And I can't remember the exact numbers, but it takes a tiny number of people sort of vibrating at that level to affect millions of people at lower levels. It's an extraordinary sort of equation. And I suppose en masse, that's what you're speaking about now. It isn't just affecting your reality, it's affecting the whole collective. And that's why we should always set the intention for the highest good of all. But the very act of saying how good can it get isn't just for our own benefit, it's for the entire world. It's for the entire collective. So the more, how simple is that for people to do? How easy is that?
Yeah.
It's just, it's just beautiful. And also, I just wanted to pick up something in your Quantum Jumps book as well. Something I picked up was page 26, and you were quoting some professor, I think, who was saying the placebo effect is now twice as powerful than it was in the 1980s. And you wrote that book, I think, in 2013.
I did, yes.
So
yeah, I think we're seeing that continue. I haven't checked to see what's happening now, but I'd expect it's getting even more so. And people like myself and like you, we could sign me up for the placebo group. Perfect. That way there aren't any bad side effects. You just get all the benefits. So we already know that we can do this just with consciousness alone. We understand this idea of the implicate order that David Bohm presented, that we're all connected. You've got access to all of the good reality, all the good, how good can it get stuff is right there. And as you keep raising your vibratory frequency of joy and so forth, absolutely you can go there. So I think it's amazing to see that the pharmaceutical companies have had so much difficulty making it obvious that their drugs are better, for example, than the placebo. It's hard to do that now because, like that scientific study was showing, the placebo group participants are just getting so many good results. Not just humans, but dogs and horses are also responding quite well to placebos.
So they must be
It's
picking
just,
up on the owner's consciousness in that case.
sure, yes. And so when we think of like the morphogenic field, like Rupert Sheldrake's work of a human consciousness, we humans, we love our pets, our cats, our dogs, and I love trees and plants too. So whatever you love, you're embracing that too, and it's a shared consciousness, like you're saying. So when your beloved, I saved my interior house plant, ficus. It nearly died this year. Took it out of it. It broke its pot, so it's a long story, but it's fine now, thank goodness. But when I'm entangled with the tree, I could tell the tree knew that I wasn't giving up on it. I even checked online. Ficus lives to be 40 years old. It's 40. And I thought, nonsense. How good can it get?
Linear time doesn't exist. Yeah. We're not having that.
So I think the tree benefited from the placebo effect too. It's because I was looking up all the things that could be wrong with it. It looked horrific, and I'm like, no, we're not going there. And then the tree joined me on this journey, and it lost all its leaves in the trauma of the whole thing. And then the funniest thing is, on the day that I had the tree in the front yard, and it was just a horrific day. I'm hosing out the roots, thinking it has root rot. I'm looking at it. And guess who's walking up to the front porch? I've never had this happen before. A tree specialist. And he's leaving his card. That's so funny. And he's commenting. He's bantering about something about nitrogen and asking if it's all good. He's just beaming at me. He seemed to think everything's fine. And the tree is just like no leaves, hosing out the roots. Oh, it's hilarious. But the tree knew how much I love it. It's been my favorite pet for 40 years. It's been the longest relationship with any living being is with this tree, my roommate for over 4 decades now. And seeing his confidence, like, oh, nitrogen, blah, 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 like, oh, it looks good. And off he goes. And I'm thinking, wow, that's like an angel. It's like a little blessing, like everything's fine. And of course, everything turned out fine. But we went through many more things, never mind the details. But the point is, even with a tree, like a dog or a horse, when you're that entangled with something you love, and it trusts and loves you, and it knows that you love it like that, it's like, oh, we're doing fine. This is weird, but we'll get through this.
I think they've actually done experiments, Cynthia, haven't they, with plants and even with seeds?
Yes,
you can either ignore something or shout at it and send hate or send love. And the results of growth are phenomenally different. There are lots of it. You can do an internet search on those. There have been a lot of experiments around that. And that just proves the whole principle of interconnectedness with all living beings, doesn't it? Including
it does.
Trees, absolutely.
Yeah, the Spindrift organization was doing some amazing work in that area. They were even traumatizing seeds, putting them in salt water in really horrific conditions. But when given these positive thoughts, they do fine. And it was crazy. It's like even the stress seeds are doing well with positive intention and love. Yes. So you can absolutely overcome any adverse conditions by loving yourself. Go to that Iliism state and just love Cynthia. Cynthia's having a hard time. Her tree looks like it's dying. The internet says these trees live to be 40, and then they go. I think they break their pots at that point. They need a bigger pot. Let's do it. Get a bigger pot. Anyway.
But we are in paradigm-shattering times right now, aren't we? We are in absolute paradigm-shattering times, and that's why, coming back to where we started with Rev Humanism, what is your greatest vision for this magical, beautiful concept of Rev Humanism that you've developed? What's your greatest vision for that?
My greatest vision is that we will start to take the stoppers and the upper limits off of ourselves. We've artificially imposed them, and I can see that they're built into our brains, our bodies. I'm seeing evidence of that all over the place. We are designed to be beautiful co-creators of divinity with the planet. But in order to have our full suite of quantum superpowers, as I call them, it requires a certain amount of responsibility, that we genuinely do wish the best for all concerned, that we're capable of being an open book, so that when telepathy goes global, that it's not a problem, because I really am only wishing the best for everyone. So there's no ugly, dark secret there, because I'm not wishing anything ugly or dark on anyone. And so it's a certain level of maturity that I would love to see humanity attain. And I see it on the Hopi prophecy rock. When I look at that, that's what I'm seeing. It's like, the Rev humanisms go through, the ones who are telepathic, have the quantum superpowers of basically, what do I mean? I mean teleportation, the quantum eraser. So when people say, I can't unsee that, yes, you can. In fact, you can undo it, and you can undo history even. These are the kind of quantum superpowers we really have. But it needs to be done from a level of spiritual maturity, and that's what I'm envisioning, that we will attain that level of spiritual maturity to not misuse these in any kind of selfish, limited fashion, where it's not, it has to be it has to be win-win-win for all of us, or else it's no good at all. So that's what I see.
100%. And do you feel, I mean, I see this clearly in my astrology, but do you feel, Cynthia, that the times we are in, the energies we're experiencing, are going to really act as kind of a surfer board for ideas like Rev humanism? Do you see it at this particular time? What's your view of the energies and the times we're in right now?
What I'm noticing and observing and feeling, and these are amazing times. I've never had, because people email me and write to me, so it gives me sort of a guide, like a temperature gauge of what's happening with consciousness. Wow. I'll just say wow. For the last 10 or so years, I've noticed people bubbling up almost like a Kundalini energy is rising across humanity. Which, if you've gone through Kundalini, then it's an experience of noticing rapid manifestation, a triggering of internal issues. And I see that with humanity, that people's shadow sides are coming up to the fore, and things they didn't want to look at or didn't want to deal with are coming up. So people are manifesting more quickly. I've just been asking people about that. They're definitely acknowledging it. Telepathy is massively increasing. Mind-matter interaction is on the upswing. And I'm hearing from people I've never heard from before who are already capable of dematerializing, teleporting. It just things that just sound like that's crazy, or like you would read books about, like the Ringing Cedars books or something, or the work that Jesus did or something. But these are people who are reaching to me at levels that I've never heard from before. So I'm definitely seeing that we're having a great awakening. We're in it. I mean, it's definitely here. The new earth is here. The new humans are here. If people are wondering, when does it start? It's starting. And some of us, and those of us who are interested in the topics, we're the front runners. We're holding the door open and we're saying, come on in. It's going to be fine. Encouraging